We've had some major PS5 updates over the past week, ranging from the first hands-on video with the DualSense controller to pre-order updates, performance updates, games, graphics, and so much more. So yeah, get those snacks ready, and here's everything new in terms of the PS5. If you want to get these really cool badges next to your name in the comments, yes, those custom Xenotech badges, then simply become a member by tapping on the join button down below. Okay, so first of all, there were a ton of rumors that the PS5 pre-orders would start basically ASAP. So these were mostly coming from Twitter leaker Ironman PS5, previously known as PSE Rebus, who's actually been very accurate in the past. He started tweeting that the PS5 pre-orders would start on Monday the 13th of July, but that unfortunately didn't happen. We then heard the news that a PS5 controller would get a hands-on look on Friday the 17th of July, and that would be also when the pre-orders would start. But unfortunately, that didn't happen either. But luckily, in that hands-on video/interview that Jeff Kigley had with Eric Lampel, the global head marketing of PlayStation, Eric debunked those pre-orders rumors as false. He said that Sony will let their customers know ahead of time when the pre-orders would actually start. They wouldn't just start like that out of the blue and catch everyone by surprise. So that's the good news. Now, the bad news, or maybe this is actually good news as well, is that now we have confirmation that you would only be allowed to buy one PS5 per household, as the stock would be quite limited at launch. This was found by a Reddit user who was browsing the webpage source code on direct.playstation.com, PlayStation's own website that allows you to purchase different things such as games and even accessories for the PS4. Now, it seems that when you'll try to add another PS5 to the basket, you'll get an error message saying that you can only purchase one console. Now, in that code, it is revealed that Sony will also be adding labels to certain PS4 products that would be PS5 compatible. This includes games and likely some PS4 accessories as well. Oh, and speaking of labels, we also got to see the PS5 labels that would be on the game cases. You know, the top left labels that we've had on PS4 and PS3 game cases and so on. And this is how it looks like on the PS5. Interesting. So you see, for the first time, I believe, ever, it is black and white. No more blue PS5 logo or anything like that, so Sony seems to have fully embraced the white and black color scheme that they've introduced with the PS5 console and the PS5 controller. And I do like it. I love this minimalistic look. And finally, now that we're talking about pre-orders and boxes, both Nikkei and Bloomberg that report that Sony is increasing the PlayStation 5 manufacturing by around 50% with aims of reaching 10 million manufactured units by the end of 2020. Now, just to give you guys an idea, the PS4 sold 4.2 million units in 2013. Now, the PS4 was released in November the 15th actually, 2013, which is around the same time as the PS5 is rumored to come out, 2020 of course. Now, the gaming community, so to say, has increased significantly since 2013, and especially considering the price of the PS5, which I will be covering in just a second, I do expect a lot of users wanting to upgrade to the new console. I don't really see twice the number of units sold at launch compared to the PS4. I think that's a bit too optimistic, but if Sony manages to manufacture 10 million units of the PS5, I do think that they would solve the entire stock issue at launch. Okay, so now let's talk about the fun part, the price. So Ironman PS5, he tweeted the full prices for not just the PS5 itself, but also the prices of the accessories. Now, I do have to say, even though he was wrong in the past in terms of the pre-orders, he was also right in the past numerous times. So even if his price leaks are not 100% correct, they should at least be very close to the final retail prices. Okay, so he says that the PS5 will cost $500, 500 euros, or 450 pounds in the UK. Now, the PS4 Pro, it was priced at $400, the PS4 was priced at $400 as well, whereas the PS3 was priced at $500. Now, $500 might seem like a lot, but keep in mind that unlike a smartphone, which can cost way over $1,000, and you end up just using it for like 2 years or so, you would actually end up using a console for a lot longer, probably for around 5 years or even more, which means that those $500 would be split into something like $100 per year compared to $500 a year, which is what a high-end smartphone would cost you. Now, $500 is actually just for the regular PS5. There will also be another version of the PS5, a discless / digital only version, which is set to cost $400, 400 euros, or £350 in the UK. So yeah, pretty much the same price as the PS4 was at launch. And really, the only reason why you would get the more expensive PS5 is if you have any disc-based PS4 games that you still want to play on the PS5. Or if you want to play any Blu-ray movies, because yes, the PS5 will have a Blu-ray player if you get a disc version. Now, personally, I'm all about streaming myself, and I do have a few disc games, but I bought all of those when the PS4 came out. And then I kind of started moving towards digital games. And those old games that I got on disc, I can always just buy them again from the PlayStation Store, as they've actually gotten so inexpensive now. So I personally think that I would be going for, yeah, the digital only version, especially since I really do like the way it looks. It looks so much better. And again, it looks like the PS5 was designed with that design in mind first, and then the disc version was like added as an accessory, you know, glued to the actual console. I don't know, it just doesn't look right. Okay, so that was the price of the console. Now let's talk about the accessories. So the DualSense controller is set to start at $60, 60 euros, or 55 pounds. The charging station for the controller, which you can use to charge 2 controllers at the same time, that's set to cost $30, 30 euros, or 25 pounds. And then the same prices for the PS5 Media Remote. Then the PS5 HD camera is set to cost $60, 60 euros, or 55 pounds. And finally, the Pulse 3D wireless headset will apparently cost $160, 180 euros, or 130 pounds. I would say that these are some very good prices for both the consoles and the accessories. Okay, now it's time for the big one, the controller. So as I mentioned before, Jeff Kigley, who's been quite well known in the gaming community before, he was the very first person outside of Sony themselves and the developers who laid his hands on the PS5 controller. And my first take from that full video and interview with PlayStation's Eric Lampel was the actual size of the controller. So, you know, we've actually seen some alleged leaked images of the controller before, where it simply looked gigantic. But now Jeff has actually showed us a side-by-side image against the PS4's DualShock 4 controller. And, as you can see right here, while the DualSense is indeed larger than the DualShock 4 was, it is not significantly larger, just a tiny bit. And realistically, the size and the weight should in fact make it much more comfortable than the DualShock 4 was. At least, this is what Sony is saying. We also got to see the bottom of the controller for the very first time, which was something that for some strange reason Sony has avoided showing, which made me think that maybe it was because Sony actually added 2 customizable buttons there, just like the back button attachment on the DualShock 4, which is an optional accessory, which is out of stock everywhere, by the way. But if you want to buy one, check out the link in the description. It might be in stock, it's pretty cool. But now that we finally got to see the bottom of it, nope. There are no buttons at all, aside from a sticker, and that's it. Jeff also mentioned that the speaker on the DualSense has a wider range of sounds compared to the DualShock 4 speaker, and also the fact that the controller had a very nice, hefty weight to it. The game that he got to test was Astro's Playroom, which is actually a spin-off game from the PSVR's highly praised Astrobot VR game, just in, non-VR this time. The game lets you fully explore the functionality of the controller, test out the haptics, the touchpad, the new adaptive triggers, and all of that. He mentioned how cool the triggers actually felt, now that the game developers can actually implement different levels of pressure in the triggers, so that when you, let's say, when you draw a bow, it would actually feel very different from when you actually fire a gun. So yeah, I can't wait to try this. Now, I was expecting Jeff to be blown away by the haptics, or at least talk about those a bit more. He did mention how realistic the game felt with those haptics, but I don't know, like I said, I was just expecting him to praise the haptics just a bit more, because that's literally the main feature of this new controller. I mean, hey, it's even called DualSense because of those haptics, so they better be mind-blowing. Oh, and speaking of Astro, I'm assuming that Jeff was indeed playing this on a PS5 unit, which means that he also got to experience the PS5 to some extent, and the UI, the menus, and all of those. But unfortunately, he didn't really talk about that at all. However, Eric, the PlayStation's global head of marketing, he did talk a bit about the PS5 itself. Aside from the pre-order news that I mentioned before, he also talked about how Sony believes in console generations and console exclusives. This is in contrast to Microsoft, which will be enforcing a cross-generation compatibility for games. So any games developed for the Xbox Series X, at least for the first 2 years, will also need to run on the Xbox One X and also the Xbox One. I'll talk about this more in a separate video, so do subscribe and enable notifications if you want to see that as soon as it comes out. But until then, Eric made a very good point here, saying that games such as Ratchet & Clank Ripped Apart would not even be possible, technically, on previous generations of consoles. This is because in this game, which is a PS5 exclusive by the way, you can actually travel through different dimensions instantly and do things such as take the fights from one dimension seamlessly into another dimension, which is only achievable thanks to the PS5's insanely fast SSD, which is more than 100 times faster than the PS4's hard drive. Making this game run on the PS4 would involve changing the gameplay as well as possibly even changing the story of the game in order to make all of this possible. Not only that, but if you make a game for the PS4 first, which you would do in a down-up development cycle, which is how most games are actually made, you would not be able to implement groundbreaking features such as this. Again, more about this in an upcoming video, but Eric does have a very good point here. And this is why the next PlayStation exclusive games to launch, such as Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet & Clank Ripped Apart, Horizon Forbidden West, and many more, will only run on the PS5. And speaking of games, Insomniac Games have confirmed that Spider-Man Miles Morales would run at 60 frames per second on the PS5. Well, not really, but kinda. So they said that you would get to choose between a 4K mode and a performance mode, and the performance mode would be 60 FPS. Amen. Okay, so here's the thing. I, amongst many others, were all hoping that this generation of consoles would finally be a 60 frames per second generation. Like, Microsoft has already confirmed this, that 60 FPS would be the standard for Xbox Series X games, and even 120 frames per second in some cases. We've even seen rumors that Sony was planning to do the same, have 60 frames per second as standard in all the games released for the PS5. However, judging by what Insomniac has said, it seems like while you can indeed play Spider-Man Miles Morales at 60 frames per second, you would have to downgrade a few graphical options and settings a bit, and possibly even the resolution as well. Now, we don't really know to what extent these downgrades would actually be as of yet, but I would say that in the very best case scenario, we can turn off ray tracing, and this will indeed enable 60 frames per second. In the worst case scenario, not only will ray tracing be disabled for 60 FPS, but the resolution will be dropped as well to 1440p or even 1080p, and then hopefully dynamically upscaled to 4K. And judging from Insomniac's message, it is looking quite likely that we will have some drop in resolution as well. Now, the good news is that Spider-Man Miles Morales wasn't really fully developed on the PS5, so it is still using the exact same engine as the 2018 Spider-Man, just modified to take better advantage of the PS5 hardware. It is only when games such as Horizon Forbidden West come out, or the brand new God of War, games which have actually been fully developed on the PS5 from scratch, only then we might see 60 frames per second as default on the highest possible settings. From the start, it seems that Sony would be focusing on the highest possible graphics first, and then the frame rate. And to be honest, even though I'm personally disappointed in this decision, games such as Last of Us Part 2 looked absolutely breathtaking on the PS4 Pro. And when I was playing this game, which I absolutely loved by the way, it honestly looked as if I was playing a PS5 game, so it looked that good. So yeah, I cannot wait to see what Sony has in store next with the PS5. Speaking of that, we actually had a recent leak from what seems to be a retailer that was listing a few Sony products. And one of those products was a black PS5 with a black controller, both having a red LED light as opposed to the standard blue LED light that a white PS5 had. Now, we've heard many rumors that Sony is indeed working on different color schemes for the PS5, one of them being black, so this could indeed be the real thing. Now, I would expect Sony to give us an update on the colors at the same time as the pre-orders open. Personally, I do think that this specific image is fake. And that's because it just looks so photoshopped, not even to mention errors such as the back of the controller is still white. Or take a look at this red light, it still has a blue glow. So Yeah, that's fake. But regardless of that being fake, we've actually modeled our very own concept of the PS5 in black. And I'm definitely team matte black here, so I would definitely go for this option, should Sony give us the option at launch. We've also rendered the console and the controller in black, but also with a blue LED light as well. Let us know in the comments which one you think looks best. White controller with a blue LED light, black controller with a blue LED light, or black controller with a red LED light. I mean, sure, of course, you can change the color of the LED bar, kinda. So on the PS4, this was done through the system itself, based on the game. I'm hoping that with the PS5, we would also have the option to have custom colors, because I think that would be really, really cool. Hashtag RGB for life. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts on the new controller, the price, and the pre-orders. Also your thoughts on exclusive games, and which controller scheme, color scheme, and console color scheme would you actually go for? I would definitely go for red and black. Yeah, let me know in the comments which one would you go for. Let me subscribe and follow on social media at Zone of Tech and at Zone of Concepts for more concepts such as this one. And yeah, this has been pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching. This has been Zone of Tech. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zone of Tech, signing out. Cheers.